All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us September 22nd, 2020. This is our Bethel's Board of Education special meeting with regards to our kickoff for a huge endeavor. Frank, call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Reese?
Present.
Ms. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Ms. Mansfield?
Here.
Excellent. All right, next up, we'll turn it over to Justin. Mr. Perks.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our special board meeting this evening. We have representatives here with us this evening from Garvin Miller, who were the architectural firm that was selected for our upcoming K-5 elementary building, and also our new football stadium / athletic complex. The agenda for this evening was emailed out. Just to give you a quick rundown of the items that we're going to discuss this evening, will be introductions of team members. We'll walk through the process from start to finish and what we're currently in the process of working on. A proposed schedule, how the process is going to be communicated. We'll have time for question and answer, and then also wrapping up with next steps. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Eric Walsell from Garvin Miller.
Thank you. So yeah, we want to kind of do a big picture overview, talk about the steps along the way, have a discussion about communication and who's on the teams. So with me tonight is Moore Little will be the project manager, point person running the project. We have Brian Wolf, who will be our lead designer on the athletic piece with the football stadium. And we have Wayne Coleman, who's a planner, really focusing on your master plan and the pieces involved with the health process. We have the rest of our team here, and you're going to see all these people along the way at different intervals. We'll bring them in at the appropriate times. One of the key people will be Bruce Miller. He'll be the lead designer that will be coming in soon once we get some of this preliminary information pulled together. But you can see we have all the engineering disciplines, and Kathy, who you saw in the interview, she's leading the site design. We got a lot of things going on there already that we'll talk about. That's one of the first steps, is collecting information about your site and really understanding what we're dealing with so we can make good decisions on where the building and the stadium go. And then, of course, Jason on construction administration. But with that, with Laura being the lead person of the team, I'm going to kind of turn it over to her now so she can walk through the different steps and what we're doing at this point.
Thanks. So Mr. Firks already gave kind of the agenda, what we're going to be talking about. So just kind of getting into what is the process. So right now we're in the pre-design. We're looking at what are the preliminary studies, the information that we need to get back. So right now we are working, we're getting information for you for surveys. We're trying to get that pricing in so that way you can hire the surveyor, so that way we can get that back. We're also trying to get costs in for environmental studies, back to looking at that. If we have wetlands, need to make sure we have that information. So right now we're getting pricing from multiple people that can do this work that will then give that information over to you so that can be hired. Then the next step is the OFCC master plan review. Wayne, would you like to talk about
that? Good evening. So as you remember in our interview, I think we had talked about checking on enrollment, building assessments, as well as looking at the overall master plan. So I've been in touch with Valerie Montoya, who is the planning manager and working with you guys. Talked with her a little bit. OFCC is in a very particularly strange position right now. They have not let contracts now for a lot of the vendors that have assisted them. So it appears that everything's kind of in this delay mode with the state until probably January, first week or two of January. So I can understand that. You know, there's nobody in the office, so everything's communication blackout almost. But I did have a chance to talk with Valerie. Told her of a few concerns. One, you know, was the enrollment. We wanted to make sure that that was accurate, that we could go forward with that. She said that, yes, that was the most up-to-date. That's what's been done. The board has approved, you know, obviously the K-5 resolution to go forward and help. So right now we're looking at that, but I wanted to, and I did discuss with her about when we can revisit that. And she's indicating that that's usually going to happen probably at the time of CFAP funding. I'm going to coax that a little bit more to see if we can't get that even before that date, because it's an unknown date in the future of when the funding will come out. And for the purpose of making sure that we're staying on top of it, so we can kind of track your enrollment here as we go through year by year if we have to, and make sure that we're updating it. I will say that she was very positive about the concerns that I expressed. She said that, you know, they were more than willing to look at any and all things that we would bring up. The other was the assessment. You know, I did mention to her about the site differential, that there was quite a significant drop on the site money. If you remember, it's just shy of $1 million, $900,000 and some $1,000. She said that's not a problem. We will be revisiting that when the time comes up for high school work to be done, and we'll be glad to look at that and update that. So that seemed to help. I think that they're almost working at like 30,000 feet. You know, you've got a note project, it's straightforward, it's new construction, not a whole lot of differential in there. Where I was bringing up the concerns was when we get to the high school. And knowing that that's in the future, I didn't want to have any surprises. If you can avoid that with the state, that's a win. So that's the reason I want to stay in touch with her, keep her involved, and get that straightened out. So I feel comfortable that she will be working with us on that on an ongoing basis. The master plan, again, the K-5 is straightforward. It's new construction. They have a set number of dollars per student. Right now, they've got you projected as 837 students, if I remember right, on K-5. So very straightforward on that. One of the things that I brought up was, depending on where the site is finalized for that K-5, of whether we need additional curb cuts or entrances, either off the state highway or off the side road. And they only gave us one site safety access allowance. So she didn't buy in on the, can you give me another one, you know, in case we need it. But she seemed to be kind of willing to, you know, we'll try to work that out. So I think we've got her on our side, at least, you know, for this project coming up. So I feel comfortable with that. So that's kind of the update from where we talked about. It appears that the construction costs for 2020 was going to occur the first week of January. That is a delay. It was supposed to have been done in April of 20. But because of COVID-19, they shut their offices down, and they still didn't get all of that done. So we want to take a quick peek at that. I don't know what the inflation factor is going to be, but my concern would be that if they had a significant jump for inflationary factor, that we'd be starting out the project right away under budget. Not under budget, but could be impacted. And so that's something that I'll keep in touch with her as they get closer to the time that they're going to update that and make sure. So if we have to do, for example, an addendum to the master plan because of that, we'll just try to work through that and see what we can get that. So that's what we have right now. You're going to handle that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions on the master plan, I guess, before we go?
Yeah. So just for clarification, we didn't agree with the projected numbers from OCC. So we only said yes, so we could move forward with a project knowing that we're going to get a reevaluation before we go into the CFAP based on that. But I mean, our estimates is based on that, our K-5 building will be under capacity, square footage wise, to hold the number of students we'll have by the time it's done. That's our, I mean, I believe that's our assessment.
Yeah, and sorry, just for clarification, I think you said 837, but it's back 873.
873, okay. I'm really not dyslexic.
No. Why do you mean 873?
But thank you. Yeah, to that point, again, I know that first part of January is going to be cost updates. I'm hoping that they will now start letting their new contracts out for their vendors. That was one of my initial thoughts was, let's make sure that enrollment is as close as we can possibly get it. One of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later here tonight is doing a program of requirements. And I'll go through that with you at that time, but it's really identifying from the district what your needs are. How many classrooms do you need? It's straightforward what's required for square footage per child based on the enrollment projection. So it's going to tell you how many classrooms you need. That may not fit what your delivery model is. And so typically school districts say, well, we need 3 extra classrooms or whatever, and that becomes an LFI. What we want to do is try to make sure that we can get credit. You are paying 100% of it because it's an ELP project, but we want to make sure we can get credit if that we need the extra 3. Some other things we'll talk about is core space, and that will provide us opportunities to be able to, if we had to put a future addition on, the student dining should be sized correctly, gymnasiums, all the core space, kitchen, so forth, is all set for that future growth. So again, I think what Valerie was indicating was that I think she's willing to work through with us on all those issues. So I'm trying to keep my fingers crossed with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, you talked about curb cuts. I know with the 2014 project, the state, and I don't know if it was the Ohio Department of Transportation, would only let us put 2 curb cuts in. So I don't know if that has any impact, but they would be 1 and 3. They wouldn't let us do that. So I'm just passing that information along. And then I sent an email today. This is sort of related, but not really, just so everybody in the room knows, about the possibility of handling some intersections along 201 at US 40 and at Carriage Trails Parkway. I contacted the Deputy Director of District 7, which is who our contact is, and I will continue to be in touch with him. I just wanted to let you guys know so that wasn't a surprise. I mean, it's just to help with the traffic flow.
Sure. If you remember from the interview, when Kathy was talking about the site, and it was one of the things that she brought up is that ODOT usually comes in and from the side road, you can only be so many feet before that intersection, and trying to squeeze 2 in there would probably be not possible. But we do have $300,000 for site safety access. So that's in the master plan, so we know that we have that. If we've got to have a deceleration lane to get in, wherever we have to come in. What I was hoping to get was something that would include the side road, and so we'd have 2 entrances. But we have 300,000 to use. So if we don't spend all 300,000 on one curb cut coming in from 201, we can shift some of that money around and be able to get another access. So we just have to wait. Kathy's working on that and checking on it. So that's good that you're in touch too.
When was your last traffic impact study done? Was that, I'm not sure I came across that.
It probably was done in 2016, maybe even sooner than that. It had to be in the 2014 to 2016 because this was actually done in 2016, so it would have been probably before
Prior
that.
to that, yeah, okay. If we can get a copy of that, that'd be good. And then we want to do them.
Any other questions on this?
Just for clarification, I've been working with our bond council. The district's going to issue certificate of participation to do this project. We will not be able to go to market until we know where the stadium's going to be and the K5. That's going to be a requirement because it's pretty much a lease, and we don't want. And what they're going to do is they're going to take interest wherever those 2 objects are on our land. So we don't want to give them the whole land as interest. We just want to give them where those buildings are going to be at. So until we know where those are for sure going to be, I can't go to the market. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. So.
Well, I think a lot of that information will come out when
Yeah.
Kathy gets her information back.
That, and we do have a preliminary design schedule, so we'll go through that.
Because I sent them from the ones that we had before, and that's what they would like to put in the offering is like a blueprint or a semi-graphic of where the things would be.
Yeah, we can get to that one. Remind me to bring that back up when we get to the schedule. So then, in the process, like right now, the selection of the construction manager at risk, right now you have the RFQ out for those proposals, getting that in, or the qualifications in for the construction manager at risk, or CMR. I will say that we have a lot of acronyms for different things, so I'm going to try and educate you. But if I happen to say one and you don't understand what I'm saying, please stop me. So CMR is construction manager at risk. I did the wrong thing. Oh, there we go. I just put the site plan in there just in case we needed to talk about it for any reason, just in case we need to bring it up. So next in the process, or like as we're continuing, some of these are all like overlapping. But one of the next things that we're going to be working on is your program of requirements. And off your enrollment of 873, or if you have another number in mind, we need to take and just start a baseline program. Like, here's the spaces, because some of the forms kind of populate themselves with some of the numbers, just based off the student numbers. And then we can start looking at how many classrooms you need, how many kindergarten classrooms versus 1 through 5 classrooms, how many restrooms, and we start to build up this whole list. And we just do this blind to begin with, just to have a baseline of something to come and say, hey, just off your numbers, this might be something that you would have. And then from there, we'll go through and basically mark up the entire thing and keep doing it and doing it. And it'll be a process that we just keep going through, because at some point we're going to have way too much square footage that you can't afford. And so then we have to start whittling it back down. And then you say, well, I really want this, but I'm willing to give up this. And it's a process back and forth. And we're just going to keep going through that process until we get the square footage where you want it, and we get the number of spaces where you want that as well. So that'll be a process. It won't take that long, but it will be a process that we'll go through with you.
I think the point of the PR, obviously, the obvious point is that, as well said, it's establishing the square footage, that's required for the building. But the secondary part of that is that we want to maximize your credit. So we want to use every bit of square footage that can qualify for credit. It's just what goes beyond that. And so that's the baseline. That's the baseline PR. We know we've hit that mark. And then whatever that has to be added to that then becomes a locally funded initiative. So it is an exercise. Have you all gone through PR before in the past?
Anybody?
Yeah, Justin. It's a spreadsheet format.
Actually, our previous firm was starting that process, but he didn't discuss it.
Yeah, it's a very important. In fact, it's the first phase of design. It's something we have to submit to the state when we have a final POR. So, and they check and make sure the classrooms are the right size, the student dinings are the right size, and all that stuff. So it is an important part. It's just that we find it more beneficial to be able to start out with the baseline, and we work with you on that. We get the baseline, we get the maximum amount of credit, and then we start entering that extra data, as Laura said, of, well, we need a few extra classrooms, or we have special needs, we need an extra room or two. And that's where we add all of that together. Now we've developed, we know what we get credit for. Now we know the full size of the building, and then we start moving forward.
And is the baseline part, is that's what's dictated by the OFCC
Yes.
as far as number of classrooms?
Yes,
Okay.
they're going to look at the total amount of square footage that's in the master plan
Okay.
should equal exactly up to what we have in the POR.
And that's based on their projection enrollment.
Based on their projection, enrollment projection. So if we, to your point, if we added extra space, and then we can challenge the state saying, hey, here's evidence that our enrollment is growing and growing. Again, even if it becomes an LFI during construction, we can capture it or recover that at the time of CPAP. So all all is not lost. It's just sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get it to come together.
And do you have enrollment experts, or I imagine you have people looking through this quite a few times, like if we kind of showed you what we kind of have been tracking versus what the FCC gave us, maybe you could come up with something, or?
Yeah, there's we don't have it in-house because it's such a specialty piece. There are several firms out there. One firm that I would trust very much is out of Columbus, and the owner is Tracy Healy, and she, in fact, is the one that is under contract, or was under contract with the state. Now, the reason I feel comfortable with what Tracy puts forth is that she has been doing this for the state and independently for probably 15 years or more. And over that time period, we've been able to track backwards in time to what the projection was. District said, oh, no, that's not going to be right. You know, we're going to have a lot more kids because we've got industry coming into town and all of that. And that's where OCC won't give you that extra kick on the enrollment because it's not solid. So like you have a brand new development, bare ground, you're going to have 150 homes, and then you start calculating, well, that's going to mean so many kids should be coming here. The state won't recognize that unless those houses are sold. So first of all, I would trust Tracy if we needed to really have, if we had to go to battle with the state, I would seek out Tracy to have her come in and do that. So she has the prior history for your district. Plus now she's doing it independently and she can pull in that data. If we can get the state to cover it, I think we can still get the same job done. So.
Yeah, I just thought it was unique because I think our growth rate is a little bit different than the package they put together, because major contributing factors was the death rate to birth rate, right? Except we're building 125, right? I mean, only in one development, they're building 125 homes a year. We're getting, last year, I think they finished up 30 something new homes in the old part of the township. And there's still signs up for sale all along Dayton Brant, all over here as well for people to build homes.
The enrollment projection that they provide from the state is based on two factors. One is science, and one is interpretation, I guess. So part of the science is they check the live birth rates within zip codes. So if Bethel has more than one zip code in it, they will check those zip codes for live birth rates. That's number one. Number two, they, meaning Tracy and her firm, would call your building department, either county, zoning, and building department, and would request up-to-date information on housing starts and how many new housing starts, and she would get some historic information. And here's the thing where we check the enrollment projection that comes in for challenges. If the building department, let's say, didn't really give her the information at all, or just kind of gave, well, this is last year, or this is the first half of this year, and that's all they gave, it doesn't give a full picture. I've actually had in the past where they requested the housing starts and they never got the information that came through from the county, and they completed the enrollment projection about that. And that's to your point, is we've got houses for sale or being new, and that's important information. So the science part comes from that. And then there's these math formulas that they use for students, that industry growth and that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of conjecture on their part. And that's why they give that forward look. It's really not a game. I guess the easy way to say it, it's kind of a game. You just have to learn where to play it. And where the state will listen to you is if you can challenge it on the science part.
Yeah, I think what happened was, so I follow the numbers pretty closely. I've been looking at them for years. It looks like they kind of gave us credit up until the current development would be completed in about 3 years from now. then from there forward, they assume no additional growth, and we know that that's not gonna be the case.
Because you are growing, the projection should be on a 10-year, you look forward 10 years.
Right, I'm saying after that, they kind of, I think they dialed back the growth to like 2% or something, which is
Okay.
not what we've been experiencing, not what we expect to experience based on the land that's being sold and the developers that are coming around. I think we can probably take that offline.
Well, and Wayne, to your point, they won't give us credit
Yeah, they won't.
for land that's probably gonna sell. I mean, and that's what she's referencing.
Right.
We think it's, most of us think it's gonna happen, but the state can't base their predictions on probably.
When again, we recognize that you have a certain amount of money to build a K-5. And to say, well, we think the enrollment is going to increase by 200 students, so let's put the extra square footage on now while we're building it. That's the gamble. Can we recover that? Well, obviously, if we're 6 years away, maybe from funding, 5 years, whatever that time frame is going to be, we've got that time to be able to compile that information. And so even if you're spending money on as an LFI for extra square footage because you anticipate that extra growth and it becomes a reality, we can recover that. So it's the gamble is like, oh, I'm spending my money now on the hopes that 5 or 6 years down the road I'm going to get something back. That's
One, and the issue we're faced with now, right, is building to the maximum capability without taking away from the stadium athletics complex.
Right.
Right. So getting that balance of those two.
Well, it's interesting that if you haven't noticed that when Brian Wolf stands up, there's usually not anybody that's bigger than him in the room. And he made it very clear in our internal meeting. He said, nobody's touching my budget. And so I said, okay.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah,
I didn't have to say it myself.
So to that regard, yeah, we know we have to work within the budget specific for the K-5.
So while we're working on the program as well, we can start the educational visioning portion. So that, to recap from when we discussed this before, this is where you can bring in teachers. We've done students, but I don't know if we go as far down as 5th grade. Your administrators, and we really start taking a look at, you can bring in parents, if you have like PTO, somebody really that you would like to bring in, people who are really interested in this building, and we bring them all together and we start to have some work sessions, maybe 3 work sessions, but we could definitely start one at the same time that we're doing the program and really start taking a look at what is it you really want and need from this facility. Like, how are you going to use this? Like, besides outside the school day, how else are you going to use this building? Or how else could you use this building? And really start those brainstorming sessions. So we'll schedule those as well with you.
And just to add to that, tours would be something as well that can go on.
If you're
Not
wanting
just
to
of the
do any
building, but
tours.
of athletic facilities and all that too.
Absolutely. So then there are a couple, so a commissioning agent, you will need to have a commissioning agent. I don't know if you have one for this edition or not. So the commissioning agent is going to, basically, he's there to verify that the design that our engineers have, but that is what you are getting out of the building. So they are looking through the drawings. They are there at the meeting where we select the HVAC system with you. So we're in the meeting, they're in the meeting, you're in the meeting, and we're all talking about what's the best HVAC system for this project. So they're at the table and to talk about, as far as like what would be best for your maintenance staff, if you're trying to maintain it yourself, or what expected costs you might have. They're just another voice to add into that. But then once we have the drawings together, they're taking a look at those drawings, just saying, hey, I think it might be better. If you move something here, it might be easier for their maintenance staff to take a look at, or they kind of give some advice on there. And then once the building is complete, they'll go through and they'll do spot checks at different components to make sure that the building is operating the way our engineer designed it to be, the way it's supposed to function. It is a requirement of OFCC. It's also a requirement for LEED. So
Would we have had one since this building was not state?
you may not have.
I don't believe we did because this was completely self-funded.
Now, you actually pick the commissioning agent. We don't pick it, state doesn't pick it. What they do is they have a pre-qualified list of specific companies that do this, and then you can choose from that. And, we'll assist you in that.
Yeah, we'll get you the information that you need to be able to make that selection.
Yeah, this one's a little different. You don't have to go through that RFQ process because there is that pre-qualified list. You can just look at the list and we'll work with you, give you some input on our experiences with them, and then choose who you want to work with.
Then one of the next things that we would have then as well is the Ecosuret. So this is with LEED. Basically, we have all the players come to the table. So you need your commissioning agent. You also need your construction manager at risk because they would be coming as well. So as far as LEED, there's points that are, because of your site selection. And some of those we may not be able to get just because your site is selected. It's not downtown Columbus. There's some that you're just not going to get because you're not, in the city. But at this Ecosuret, we start looking through what are the credits that are going to make the most sense for your project. Some do cost money. Those may not be the ones you want to use. Some are just really good practice, and those are easy enough to get. A lot of construction managers are already getting the construction waste management, basically that they are recycling the construction waste rather than throwing it in the landfill. So they need to be at the table as well, the construction manager, because they're agreeing that yes, they're going to try to get regional materials that are harvested out of the ground and made within 500 miles of this site. Or they're trying to say that yes, we're going to include recycled content in the materials, and they need to be part of that discussion, as well as construction waste management. The commissioning agent is there as well if we're just going to discuss enhanced commissioning, basically coming around and looking at taking a, help me out.
Thermal scan.
Thank you. A thermal scan of the building and making sure that is everything sealed up the way you expected it to be. That is a service that they offer. Any questions on
Yeah, so
that?
LEED's just a scorecard starting out with all these different options that you can choose to do or choose to attempt to get points. And to get that LEED silver, there's a certain score you're trying to get to, 50. So you pick and choose. Some of them will say, like Laura said, well, this has a cost to it that we don't want to add. So you choose to pass on that one. And then there's other things that you can do that there's relatively no cost that are good practice. You choose to do those. And we work as a team with you and all the entities she said. And, the whole thing is you're trying to get over 50 because in the end, some of the ones you're attempting you won't get. So in the end, you want to be over that 50 to get your LEED silver building, which is OFCC required.
Probably a point here is that at the Ecosuret, that's when the state will be involved. I mean, that's when they'll come in and they actually put that together, and we have to go through those points. Is that correct? They're going to have the planning manager come in and we go through on the
They have
Ecosuret.
representatives there.
Okay.
They'll have representatives at that meeting.
The commissioning agent selection is yours. The educational visioning and the program requirements is what we're doing from our office, getting it prepared to go through. But sometimes it's districts go, I don't know when the state's going to be here, and I don't know when they're not going to be here, and how much are they going to be pushing us? And it's not that bad. It really isn't. It's just a startup part.
So then we get to have some fun and design. This is my favorite part. So getting into, these are the different stages of design. So schematic design, this is when we're gonna start taking a look at those boxes. Each space is a box, and where do those boxes go, and what's the best layout for each of those spaces, and what are the adjacencies? So we're gonna get all of those boxes where they need to go, but we're not gonna have a lot of detail. Might have some doors, but we're not gonna have much detail. And that's where we can make it sure that we've got a square footage check. Like we know that it all fits, and we're within the square footage that we said we were gonna have at the POR for the program of requirement. So then once we move beyond, and then at schematic design, at each one of these phases, you will have an estimate as well. So that way you know that, yes, this design that is all linear is, you can't afford that. So, we're gonna compact it all in, and yes, it stays within our budget, and then we can move forward into the design development. With design development, where it's getting closer to this final bid doc. You're gonna see doors, ceilings. We're gonna start making selections and finishes. We're gonna know what the HVAC system is. We're gonna have the receptacles shown. We're gonna have a lot of discussions between schematic design and design development to get all of that information in there. But then again, it's another check. We're gonna stop, do another estimate, make sure that yes, you're still on budget. We were also talking about, if you wanted to get into the football stadium earlier, a way to do that with that being a smaller package than the big building, would be to do a package and send that out for early site for the whole site, but then send out the documents for the football stadium. That way they could get moving, the CMR could get moving on that portion while we're still working on the K-5 and getting the rest of those documents finalized. With that, you would have, with that package, you would have a guaranteed maximum price from the construction manager. And that's basically, they're taking a look at it, they're putting an estimate to the whole package, and then putting together their contract, and their contract is called a guaranteed maximum price. Then while they're doing the estimating and getting that whole GMP package together, we're going to continue working on the construction documents for the K-5 and get the rest of that pulled together, so that way they can do it all over again and do another guaranteed maximum price then for the remaining work. And then we've got bid documents there. It can be done a couple different ways. If we finish the documents, they then can get their guaranteed maximum price together, and then we give them the final bid docs, or that can flip flop sometimes. And then we give them the bid docs, they bid the actual final documents, and then they give you a guaranteed maximum price. Then we get to move into construction.
I've been had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Bethel earlier today on the phone in regards to the agenda. He had mentioned the potential to look at the early site package. I think that's hopefully something we'll do here this fall to look at. To allow us to be able to move forward with smaller of the two projects, which is the football stadium.
Yeah, I think you'll see the next part of the agenda, we get into more proposed dates.
Okay.
And you'll see the advantage to doing that. We can get a jump start in the spring and start working in the football stadium.
Any questions on what any of this means or further? So like Eric said, this is a first attempt at a schedule for the project. And this is all depending on what site issues we find from the studies that are out right now. If we find that a wetland has to be moved, that puts a huge wrench into this entire thing. And if the CMR comes on board and says, absolutely not, we need to back this up, then we're going to need to look at that too. So those are my two asterisks on the side over here. So working on the OFC master plan review right now. Also, the construction manager at risk is out for selection right now as well. Educational visioning would be the next thing that we could start working on, or at least get it on the calendar. The lead Ecosuret we really can't schedule it until we have a CMR on board because they need to be at the table as well. Then we are working on the program verification. And while those site studies are coming in, that's going to help with some of that as well, getting all that information together. So hopefully, once your construction manager is on board, we can start moving into schematic design. So basically take the month of October, rest of September, and just gather all of the information that we need, get all the players to the table, and then we can start moving on schematic design. So if we are able to work on schematic design and finish by the end of this year, then we would be able to start on design development. So also, we've got schematic design, item F is shown completing in December 17th, but then not starting DD until January 18th, and that wall in there is for your estimate, that people need time to work on the estimate. It's also the holidays, so like you guys don't want to come to meetings, I'm sure. So then design development going through April or into April. And then at that same time, looking at sending out that early site package for and then the football stadium docs. And if we're able to do that in April, that allows your construction manager to get moving, maybe in May, maybe June, until he gets his contracts all with his contractors, but they would be able to start in the summer of 2021. So then working through the design development reconciliation of the estimate, trying to get that done through May. And then working on the construction documents or / GMP documents, depending on what we're doing with the construction manager and how they prefer to work. Doing that through August. And then the guaranteed maximum price, normally you would have that meeting be facilitated. So they have somebody else come in. We all are going through and pouring through those documents. It's a lot to go through. And they are there to help you get everything in this GMP that you're needing in there. They will question the CMR. They'll question what we have in our docs to make sure that everything's in there that needs to be. And so then if that is done at the end of August, if we wrap up the final documents in September, they would be able to bid the whole project in October. Now, if, like Eric was saying before about getting a jump start on the early site package in the football stadium, if we don't do that right after the DD phase, if we don't push a small portion of that up till there, when they bid in October, they issue all their contracts to their subcontractors in November. You've just lost doing any site work until the spring. So we wouldn't be starting any construction until spring of 2022. So that's where that helps. It is more work, more sheets for us to split out those packages to make sure we still have everything covered rather than waiting it all till the end. But it helps you to get moving and get in faster. So, questions on that? I know that was really fast.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, we were kind of hoping to have this stadium done by next year. Is this saying this is not possible? Like for the start of school next year?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's possible. I'll let Brian speak on that because we're working on some stadium projects now.
Yeah, we're working on some stadium projects now and just talking with some of the reps of bleachers and some of the field turf. In order for right now for them to get bleachers done for the fall of 2021, we need to have the bid documents to them in December of this year. So for us, that's just for a bleacher replacement. So to do the entire stadium and the master plan that's going to go into it and all the work that's going to go into that design, I think it's going to be a big challenge to try and get that done for the fall of 2021.
So what time frame would we be looking at? I mean, ballpark. I know you can't give an exact date or anything, but
Probably be using it spring.
As far as it being completed, if we get into an early site package and then we get the documents bid out, I would see it being probably maybe early winter of next year, wintertime, it being completed.
And then same kind of question for the K-5. If the bid goes out in October, you're saying contracts in November, what would typically be a good estimate for when that building would be completed and be able to open to students? Would we make it at the beginning of the school year in 2024, or are we gonna miss that?
You would be in 2023, would be that'd be a comfortable schedule to be ready by the fall. It's actually probably in the spring of spring of 2023. So
it wouldn't even take 2 years?
No, not in construction.
Not for 100,000 square feet. No. So I think you got a nice, comfortable time period for your K-5. I think we're pushing it to be in the stadium for the fall. Again, we need input from the CMR, get their feedback. Maybe there's ways they have in mind that we can accelerate that, but I think it would be a challenge.
But on the same fair from the get-go, we also indicated best case scenario was next year, but more than likely it's gonna be the following year. And part of the stage you use to say the practice, something like that. Can it be occupied before the first game?
I mean, you could certainly do it in phases if we wanted to. That's something I don't think we can decide right here, right now. If we want to sit down and we want to look at what parts of the facility would you want to use, if you want to phase it out, or if you want to do it where we're going to cut the ribbon and voila, here you are, Bethel community. So that's a decision that you all can make. If we want to do that, and the CMR would be a big help in that process because they're really experts in phasing and how the construction method goes and timetables and stuff like that. So once they get on board, we can talk about that. So we're working right now on it, getting the preliminary information of what we're going to all do, and then once the CM gets on board, we can start that conversation.
Right. When you talk to the bleacher manufacturers, do they indicate is there something abnormal with the timeline right now? Like, is it a COVID related, or that's just?
No, it's just the typical timeline to be able to get a 2,000. This one was a 2,000 seat bleacher with press box, and he said that they need the documents by December. They'll get things bid out, get things procured by February, March timeframe, and then once March hits, then they're going to do the install. The install on something like of that size is anywhere from 4 to 5 months from by the time you get it all completed. So because when you bid it, the bleachers just don't show up the next day. Obviously, they need to procure everything. They got to go through the shop drawing process and the approval process and everything else. So, and he noted that we don't like to get the bleachers done on August 1st. We like to have a little fluff in there to, bad weather in the spring or something like that. They don't want that due date to be the day that the scrimmages start. So.
So that could be time you're looking at, even if you got we're not going to, but even in an event where you get the bid documents as far as the bleacher stuff in December, you're pushing an August 1 date to begin there, even in December. So we're looking in April, we're talking about the following January, February.
Right. So we're finishing up, correct, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then that's full project. If you're, and haven't done a project in phases where let's get the football and track done so we can practice, and then we'll come back and work on the bleachers and press box later. And, the different event pits and the scoreboard and everything else we've never done a phase like that. It's always been the districts wanted this, voila, here you go, it's just, it's what, so I think it's what everybody wants.
Sometimes the stadium, like a concession locker building sometimes follows.
Sure, yeah, you can do something like that. I can follow that, but.
So back to the conversation on bonds, we would have, as far as the schematic design phase would be done in December. But as far as like knowing where like, if just needing it on the site plan, here's what it is, and not the site schematic design completed, we would have something, between those dates. I don't know where that hits you on selling a bond.
Sooner the better, because of the market right now and the interest rate. So it was news to me today. I just found out. So that they want that because it's certificate of participation is a lease to purchase kind of debt. And so they're getting interest in something until we pay it off. And if they don't know where it's going to be put at, they're going to say, we want interest in the whole 160 acres. We're not doing that. So all they wanted is the plan site and where those two would be. And they would just include that's your interest, is where those two are at.
Gotcha.
So they know.
Any other questions on schedule?
On that schematic design, is that where we're gonna understand where everything's gonna be and what they're gonna kind of look like?
So
To the outside, looking at the building, like kind of the layout, how they're gonna face, which,
yes, like you'll see the corridors, you're gonna see that on the site, and where that is on the site, be able to see like where are we planning for the playground? How are those students accessing and getting out there? Does that answer your question?
yes.
Okay, gotcha. We'll also have exterior elevations, what the building looks like as well.
So do you think we'll be able to understand the site where the building and the stadium are gonna go well before that?
Or, yeah, I mean, during that schematic design phase between November and December, yes. Yes, we're gonna be having all those conversations.
Yeah, it
Yep.
could be something that at the end of November, we have enough information with outlays on the site. You can get that submitted.
Thinking November of next. Okay.
This year. Yeah. One of the things that I know we wanted to talk about is communication. You have a finance committee, or facilities committee. You have a facilities committee. You have, and now a core team committee. You have your board, and I know you've got facilities committee members and board members on the core team. So I guess we kind of just wanted to find out, we know that your board wants to be informed. We'll show up to the board meetings to have those conversations and give you updates. I guess my question is, what is the difference between what our involvement is with the facilities versus the pool? That was my question.
We were hoping you were gonna tell us the difference.
Right,
Oh.
right, we haven't officially selected the core committee
Oh,
yet,
okay.
because we were sort of waiting to filter that out.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so every project is different, how we do communication. There are some that we have, a superintendent, and they make all the decisions. And they keep the board informed, and they keep their teachers informed, and we just work with the superintendent. Then we have others that, so I have done we didn't call it a core team, but they did have like one of their maintenance, head of maintenance was there. They had their administrators from the different school buildings, and I guess they kind of acted as that core, maybe. We had meetings with them, and they made the decisions. So like we were discussing, we had meetings with the staff. The staff member really wants to be on the outside wall facing east because they love the sunrise. I don't know, I'm giving some weird example here. And we need that core team to say, or the administrators say, that is not going to happen, and we're going to move on. They're going to be where they are, but we need an answer from somebody. So I guess who does that come from? Is that coming from the facilities or the core team? And I guess as far as your facilities group, I'm not sure what your facilities group does right now.
So they've been doing everything up to this point to help us kind of get here,
Okay.
right?
Were they a committee before this?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We didn't make one just for this.
Just making sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I have worked with the facilities committee. That was basically 3 of the board members is their facilities committee. And basically they just wanted to be involved and be at those meetings that we were have discussing design, and then they informed the board. And that's how that district worked.
Was it 3 or 2?
I'll say 2.
It's 3 is
Yeah, you're right. I'll say 2.
Yeah, that's fine. So part of what we're trying to delineate, right, is one, how can we be the most effective team to work alongside you to accomplish our goals of building the facility and the stadium in the most efficient and effective manner possible. We weigh that with all 5 board members really want to help in the design and execution of this as well, right? So there's that. So, we can't change the past. Right, but there's a bad past history with buildings here, and so we know that we want to do that the right way. A lot of people have changed since that has happened. Definitely a completely different superintendent and treasurer. Board members are different from that aspect, but everyone's kind of wanting to play a role. Right, we've had a facility committee. I mean, our 2. The 2 that are sitting here and Mr. Gilbert that is online, right? The 3 kind of solid core that have been at all of the facility committee meetings, help driving this direction is our great community voice as well, right? So we have 2, Justin chairs our facilities committee meeting. We have 3 board members on it, plus we have the 3 and
For community and treasurer.
yep, and Brendan. So, I mean, that's kind of our makeup. What we were thinking on the core team was, 2 board members, a community member, and then obviously Mr. Firks and any specialists that he decided to be there. But is that too much? Like, what are we going to accomplish in a kind of thinking about that core meeting, right?
Right.
You definitely want to include your maintenance supervisor.
Yeah.
You probably want to include some sort of technology.
And the principal.
Yeah, I would also assume for the stadium portion, you got your athletic director involved. So, I mean, your core team could end up being a pretty decent number of people, based on, he's going to be involved in the stadium, but he loves K-5, but he's not worried about that.
I like teaching first preferred grade PE. What's the gym gonna look like?
And really with the stadium piece, we could set up meetings, separately from the core team meeting. Okay, and then the core team meeting could be just an update to the rest of everybody else of what's going on with K-5 building. So we almost have our own,
And
I guess, design and I'm not gonna say a core meeting, but a lot of our own meetings. Okay.
One of the things we kind of talked about was if we had a core for the athletics piece and a core for the facility, which really that switch out is different board members
There you go.
and a different community. So if he was on the K-5 and he would be on the athletics, or if one of the 2 can't make the meeting, maybe Mr. Gilbert can make the meeting. And for whichever one it is for that piece.
Yeah. And then the nice thing, with Eric, we're going to be at all the board meetings. And if for some reason you're absent and you can't make the board meeting, you're going to still get that update in the board meeting later, as well as anybody else that's at the board meetings can get just kind of the high level details of where we're at. So.
And I think, there's many questions about this core meeting, right? And I think it's because we collectively haven't been engaged in building something of this magnitude for our school. So, what happens in a core meeting? Is it appropriate for us to put it up on our YouTube channel and people can watch what's happening in our core meeting? I mean, there's that proprietary information. Do we not want to do that? Do we just want to, hey, this is a 15-minute meeting, this is an hour meeting? Kind of manage our expectations of what that is so we can manage we see
Right.
how we want to respond to that.
So as far as like, I know Wayne and I were talking, the core team that you're pulling together, I think leaves out some of the people that we would typically see when we're starting to do like the program. As far as many times we see like the administrators are in that. So if that is a separate meeting with administrators and not the core, that's not necessarily bad. I'm just saying that first initial POR meeting may not be best for your core. It may be better to pull in the administrators to say, hey, we know how many students, or if you have a curriculum director, bringing them in. Those would be the people that really start looking at that program. And then as far as the next step is schematic design, that we start putting all those boxes on the page. Your head of maintenance is going to really be interested about where exactly are all of those custodial closets. Where is my maintenance? How am I getting to it? Where's my access? They may not be the best one to just make that determination where first grade is versus fifth grade. So we just need to make sure we have the right people.
Well, that was gonna be my question from an athletic standpoint, the stadium as well, because obviously with soccer, football, being a track facility and us trying to incorporate cross country as well, I would want to bring some of those coaches to a programming type stadium and ask them for their expertise as the cross country track coach.
Absolutely.
Where should the long jump pit be? Where should, how's the meet gonna run? Where are we gonna station people for team camps for a cross country event?
Right.
Things of that
And
nature.
that information is not in core meeting
Yes,
level. Okay, the core meeting is kind of up here.
yes.
All these design meetings that we're gonna have are, we can invite 10 people, 22, whatever.
So that was the idea of the facilities committee, is the part you were just talking about, is the design and
Yep.
allowing community to have input and being transparent to the
Yep.
community. So maybe that's the
Yeah.
line that it's
And I'll be honest, if everybody here does our job, those core meetings should take a half hour. Because everybody's already updated for the most part. Really, it's for those people that may be absent, or other community members that may want to come or listen in, or if you do YouTube Live or wherever you decide, that's what that's really for. But everybody going into this core meeting should know what's going on already. So,
It might be helpful just to define what takes place in a core meeting is really a higher level, like you said, it's a higher level. Typically looking at schedules. Where's the delay? Why aren't we on schedule? We're ahead of schedule. That's good news. It's looking at trying to get a particular vendor or contractor in. Let's say it's got to be site, or we're waiting on ODOT. Why the delay? Waiting on ODOT. All of that is taken down in notes, and then typically the next core meeting you start with those exact same notes right where you left off, and now you update, and then you update, and so you have this long history of time you get this project done. Through core meetings, you'll be able to go through that binder and look at everything from the very first day all the way through. But it's a higher level meeting.
Yeah.
Right, so many times with a core, with OFCC at the table, like OFCC would show up to those meetings on like a CFAP project, they come to all those meetings. And they want to be informed of how's the schedule going, what's it looking like, what's information that's needed from anybody. And then we talk about outstanding, if there's things during construction, if there's things that we're wanting pricing on, or if there's any changes that have been made, we start talking about finances a little bit as well. So that as far as that, it's a much higher level meeting. And if that's what you're wanting with your core, then that's when we have discussions on, like when we bring in the commissioning agent and we talk about the building system and the mechanical system for the building, like whose facility is going to be at that meeting versus the core team.
So a lot of it sounds to me a lot like you really need, most of the stuff is stuff that I'm thinking from our perspective isn't gonna impact the core meeting. It's almost like with Justin saying, okay, we're bringing in administrators and teachers to do this, right? And then there's the core meeting is a facilities committee meeting, almost, not exactly, but could be. for those aspects, for that higher level, and then utilizing the CMR and Mr. Perks for your experts to come in and discuss those individual needs almost.
Yeah, we could give an update of like, these are the meetings that we took place last month. These are the information things that we found. Here's what we plan to do in the next month, and kind of give all that information to your core. Like if we've already got board members in that meeting, if that meeting took place, like maybe the hour before your board meeting, be able to have an hour to quickly go through that. Should only take a half hour, but if there's questions or you really want to discuss something further, somebody really wants to look at the design, we can look at the design. And then that way you're informed prior to the board meeting, and we can give those even higher level comments than for the board meeting.
Because what we're kind of looking at too, I'm just throwing it out there, right? Setting us up in that aspect would allow for, if there is a significant change that dollar wise or whatever that board would vote on, it would proceed right into that with the recommendation from the facilities committee with the board members on there. So they could all be effective within an hour of the meeting.
So, Laura, when would you hold your first core meeting? At what point in design, end of design? Where would you be?
I would wait till after the CMR's on board.
Okay.
Let's pull some information in, let's get some more, and then hold one of those
So
meetings.
to kind of simplify it, I mean, your core team probably has a little more of the hierarchy. And then the facilities group, in some ways, drives what's going to go to the core meeting. Early in design, it's almost reversed. Your facilities group, we're really entrenched in, okay, where are we going to put the building? How are we going to do this? We're pulling information from the district. It's your district. So you've got all that knowledge, and we can pull that in. So facilities group really is going to be kind of the driver.
Okay.
And then as design keeps going further and further into design, you never want to back up in design. So that's why there's steps. And so you make sure you're making the right decisions. Facilities group pushing that design up. And it finally gets closer to, having the construction manager on. Now you've got another entity that's also now going to be involved. And we're going to take information from them as well. And then there's going to be a little bit of a reversal. So the facilities group is going to kind of drop down a little bit because we're so far into design. We know their own square footage. We know our estimates.
Now we're looking at light switches. What color are they?
And there's less
individual
decisions for you to
HVAC
be making, and
Yeah.
now we just need the time to get it all on the drawings.
Yeah, and then in that case, you'll have a colors committee, you can have a furnishings committee, if you want to put those types of committees together, and we meet with them individually, and then you update the core meeting at the core team at the core meeting. Same way with the athletics, if we decide to do a separate facilities committee for that, or some people want to double up, you can, but we'll have separate facility meetings for the stadium. So
I'm assuming at that point, we would also be able to look at different, like, if we wanted to give the community an input on what type of, like, if we're gonna get turf put in, like, what the logo in the middle of the field is gonna look like, we could have different mock-ups involved. And those are the kinds of decisions that start getting made at that point.
Yeah, and that's when I don't know if you recall the rendering that we put up during the interview, but then that can go to the full community. If for somebody that doesn't want to get involved, but they want to see where we're at, here's a rendering of, this is the logo we decided on to put in the middle,
We can start using those documents to do other LFIs with the business community for, marketing in the stadium, naming rights opportunities, things of that nature.
Scoreboard, do you want to go huge with it, or just basics, those types of things. The community can have a lot of input on, businesses. So.
And naming rights on the scoreboard.
Yep.
Yeah, Justin first.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you for your donation.
I don't Danny Elam if I'm going to win that.
Make sure you have a good race there.
I don't think there's any right or wrong of how you staff your committees. I think that when we work with districts, just like you folks, well, we got a pretty good group that's been involved all the way along, and we want to stay involved. The community wants to stay involved. The only fear we have, I think, that we try to guide you on is that sometimes you can overload a particular committee that is supposed to be the decision makers. You know, that, hey, today's the meeting, we need a decision today, otherwise, we got to delay and delay. And every time we delay, we're burning money. So that's the only thing I think we try to make sure that we're guiding just enough so that we get the appropriate people in at the right time. But I think your facilities group has been very strong, and they're basically going to take the lead, I would think, here early on of guiding how we're going, and then stay with that. And you'll just see a natural blending, you know, as we go.
We're gonna see this transition, right, where facilities committee
Yeah.
may be really busy. Okay, you're in the weeds.
Yep.
Okay, now we're out of the weeds. Now all the experts are in the weeds and we're
Yeah.
hanging out here and you guys are informing us of all
Basically,
that.
yep. And it pretty much just comes down to a board meeting that you'd say, you know, if the state were there, they'd say, are we on budget and are we on schedule? Yes, that's the end of story. That's all they care about. Well, you're not the state, you're gonna own the building, so, you know, are we on budget? Yes. Are we on schedule? Yes. Do we have any issues? You know, we found out we hit an oil well. Somebody brought that up.
I did.
Yeah.
So instead of putting the stadium there, we're putting an oil rig.
Yeah, so we have a contract with BP Oil.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Stadium's paid for. We're good, right?
Yeah, so I don't know if we answered like the question when you asked. We were hoping you would tell us, I guess. Overall, in our experiences, I would say on a core team, you would have typically the superintendent, the treasurer, a board member or two, and an administrator that's in the building. Those five for sure. Okay, and then from there, you can decide if there's others that want to be a part of it.
Okay.
That would be a good start.
Okay, and we kind of have that split up. I think Justin pretty much laid that out. We just split our board members for those. Yeah, I was just kind of like, well, I don't know if that's really the action where we need to put all our gusto versus the facilities committee kind of running it from that aspect. But now that I see, we're going to have to delineate at some point from facilities committee to more core, for you know, getting us down to those funding facts with a lot of subject matter experts. Does that make sense? Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, and I think you'll find it'll just be naturally occurring, you know, as we progress with it.
Okay.
You may start out with a lot of folks on there, and then after a while, it's kind of like, well, my job's done. You know, and there's always going to be questions. And so when the questions come up, then we can answer those and either report at the board, report back to the facilities, report it to the board. That's where it has to take place.
Well, and then like the common denominator between all those meetings, I'm assuming, is your superintendent.
Mhm.
And so really, you know, the things that come in from your meeting, and treasurer could be too, yes. Oh, he's electing you. Really, so you may not be in one of those other meetings, but you know, where did all the information from this, somebody had a thought after the fact, where did they go with that information? It really just needs to get funneled down into one person, so that they're aware of everything that's going on, and then they're the one who's communicating with us. So really, that's also what we were trying to show on here, is that really it works best when everything funnels down to that one person, and they're the communicator back and forth with us. That way you don't have community members emailing us, or, you know,
Right.
some random somebody, a
I can't
teacher
promise
emailing
anything.
us, or, you know, it happens every once in a while, I get it.
Welcome. But I mean, I believe that would be Mr. Fricks for us. Yeah, Mr. Fricks.
Perfect.
That works the best.
I don't have anything else. Oh, next steps. So really, Wayne's already working on the baseline program, starting on that. Really, next step would be then to have a meeting to discuss the baseline program. And then also getting a date on the books for the first educational visioning session would be really the next step. We don't have to schedule those meetings tonight, or we can. everybody can take a look at their calendar, we can get back
So
together.
quick question for my to-do list, and it's kind of off topic, but it's not. Where would I find a copy of the traffic study? Feedback? Do I have to call somebody for that, or do you guys have access to it?
It'd be whoever the engineer was.
I mean, who was our primary that built this school?
Who was the, I guess, the civil engineer that you had? when you did
We
the-
hired a firm, I'm trying to remember. The name's not coming to me.
I'll have to look at it.
And you'll have to have one updated. You'll have to have one
Okay,
right
so it's
down.
not a huge video.
But it'd be
No.
nice to see it.
Yeah,
If we
you
can get our
have it,
hands on
but-
it, it would be good, but
so if I called like ODOT, they probably wouldn't have it.
I can probably help you
Okay.
figure that out.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll work with you on that.
typically it's the civil engineer and then, the school files it.
Sorry to change subject. was just-
No, that's fine. I had it on a to-do list.
Now, yeah, because ODOT's gonna have, jurisdiction, so it's really gonna be their call. More so, we're working with a district now that it's the city makes the decision. It's not a big city, it's the city of Shelby. Okay, the city of Shelby is making the decision on the traffic study, not ODOT. So, different.
He's district seven. You need to contact one of those district seven. I can send it.
I can probably figure out who this traffic stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, well, you guys.
One other thing is, what about that, commission and agent selection? When does that need to be done, and is that on Mr. Brooks' list?
So that's on our list still to get you information so that you can make that selection.
But I would say, soon, about the same time you're picking your CMR, you want to know the commission agent too, because then we need to have that Ecosuret shortly thereafter.
That's something to do with that evening.
Yeah.
Do they have to be interviewed, or you said there's like a pre-approved list?
You
Yeah,
can
you
do
can just
interviews.
You can do interviews, or you can just pick off the list.
Would you guys be willing to give a recommendation, or,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if it's a pre-approved list, I don't know.
Well, they're pre-qualified for the state, so that each commissioning agent is following a certain protocol,
Okay.
inspecting and checking the building. So that's where they get the pre-qualification. Some do a better job. Some get so far into the weeds, it takes months to get back out. That light bulb's dimmer than that light bulb. There's some that are very efficient, very good. And so that's, I think, where we can help you with that. That's just your experience. Yeah. But it is your decision, and
I think you're the ones that did it.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah, they just finished up the one at Shelby.
I just went back through all the emails and found it.
Yeah.
I can actually get that.
Yeah, okay.
Start with them. If they don't have it, I'll put some work.
And they would be the ones
Yeah.
doing the studies.
Yeah, Sydney, Portland.
Lovely.
I have a Michael Gottlieb.
Michael got them there, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm meeting with him tomorrow.
There you go.
Maybe I'll bring it up.
June of 2014.
so this next steps, we have this baseline program, we've already talked about the POR. So there, I think, we'll try to get a calendar date. And Justin, we can communicate with you probably directly on that particular meeting. I think that's more of the principals. It'd be for that team, superintendent, treasurer, curriculum, principal, special needs director. Okay. So that would be the nucleus, I think, of what we need, because as we go through that spreadsheet, we're going to go down through a list. I mean, there's all these tabs on the spreadsheet: academics, administration space, music, arts, gym. You go on and on and on, all the way down to building services, and that all gets totaled up, and you see what you've got. And so it's important to have the kind of staff part of that. It really doesn't have anything to do with, there is no design. It's just identifying square footage.
Requirements.
But from that, once we have that, it leads us then on to the educational visioning. Now we get a bigger group, more people involved. And now we really start talking through, well, we'd really like to see this. So we know the square footage of what we get maximum credit for, plus maybe some extra space. And then the visioning helps to identify all of that again in either more or less. And then it gets us to a final POR.
In the visioning, that's more of the hallway layout, classroom layout. Is that, am I getting that correctly? I'm thinking visual thing.
It's schematic.
That's really more talking about what could this be?
Okay.
It's more conceptual and not actually seeing spaces. At least the first two meetings. The third meeting would be where we would have a floor plan together and then talk to the committee, like, are we, the things that you identified that you're really important to you in this building, have we met that with this floor plan?
Okay.
It's also a discussion about where do you want your educational delivery, where do you want that going as a district, like for the K-5, is a makerspace or that type of concept, is that something that's important that needs to be part of the program, or is that not a direction you're going? Do you want some extended learning areas, breakout spaces that they can get outside the classroom? Maybe you want that, but you want a small component of it. You know, some districts, we have these much larger ELA spaces. So it's that broader discussion of what kind of delivery, educational delivery are you going to be doing in this building, and how does that affect the program or requirements that we came up with? And through that process, many times you'll find that, and Wayne kind of hit on that, is that baseline POR that the state gives you with just so many square foot per student, you find there's different programs within there that you've decided are important to you as a district that go above and beyond what the state allows, and you make a decision that we understand that's extra square footage, that's extra cost, but it's something important to us that we're willing to put those funds towards. So it's a big picture kind of thing of where do we want to go with this K-5 building. And that's where it's a great opportunity to get community members that are passionate about the K-5, that want to participate, parents that are very involved and want to have a voice, students and staff and administration, you know, get that group together for those sessions to get their feedback. That's really what sets the benchmark and where we go from there.
So when you start that visioning process, you have something on paper already or just a spreadsheet?
No, there's three sessions. The first session is more just giving you ideas, showing you what other schools have done, trying to get you to think maybe outside the box of what you normally are thinking, and just consider, do you want to do anything different than what you have done, or just trying to generate ideas. We come back the second time, and that's usually much more involvement with the group where they're breaking into small groups and then they're brainstorming from what they've seen. And we show examples up there and people go up and, you know, tag, you know, I like this. And you start seeing, well, the majority of the group likes this concept. And they start giving more definition to us as to, okay, from seeing your examples and from talking in small groups, this is what the consensus is. Then we take that and refine that SD floor plan, and we come back in the third session and we say, here's what your building's starting to take shape and look like. A lot of times it's really focused on those educational pods, like how's your staff working together, and what support facilities do they need within the classrooms and academics to make them most effective in their teaching.
You know, an easy way to think about that is back in the old days, you hire an architect, they came in, they got a little basic information, and they designed the building floor plan. Here's where all your classrooms are, this is your hallway. And then you'd look at it and say, well, I don't really understand it, but I think I'd like to change this and change this. Well, the architect just spent all those weeks or whatever to do the schematic. Now they overhaul it, do another one. So think of this stage of going through the visioning. It's before all that effort is put into it, you're defining ideas, and now it gives us something that we work from, and then just do minor adjustments. It's just an easier process. And I think it really does get the district involved in it, where the worst thing we could do is ever design and then build a building that you looked at, finished, and said, that's just not gonna work real well. I mean, that's a complete failure.
We've already checked that off.
And Brian hit on that too. Within those 3 sessions, there might be a point where, we take you out and visit a couple buildings, 2 buildings, and people start seeing, I like how this is set up, or no, I don't like this. And that's a great.
Typically, we like to try to get that between session 1 and 2, because in session 2 is when we have, we'll do an exercise of all the photographs, and you put like a tab on there, a sticker on which one you like. And then some of them are the ones that were actually visited, and we can get true feedback on.
And does the athletics go through that same basic process?
Mhm.
So there could be a point where you take people out and look at other stadiums?
Yep.
Is that a separate meeting, or does that all happen at the same meeting?
Yeah, I think we're gonna want to break these apart, because there may be some overlap. Some people may want to be involved in both. We want to make sure we get them out to it.
I was looking for an old POR from another district, and I don't have one with me in paper format, but some of the things that come out of the POR, you cannot see that spreadsheet very well.
I can.
That's because you got an eagle eye. What comes out of it is that we're able to do a spreadsheet that identifies everything that's co-funded, creditable, everything that goes to your local share, everything that goes into an LFI, everything that might go into a demolition, abatement, all of that gets compiled. So as we correct the POR, we correct this spreadsheet, and then we come up with the final number. Now, we usually do that for a district that has to go to the ballot. Because they say, well, what do we go for? What kind of millage do we need? In your case, you have a set number. So we want to make sure that at the end of the day, whatever we come up with here is going to match what you have for your budget. But it's just an ongoing thing. And then eventually, with Laura and her teams, and Brian's going to do the same thing, a little bit different on the athletics, but if Laura had a question, or one of the teammates had a question of, well, how much money do we have in for this or this? Who's paying for that? Is it an LFI, or are we getting credit for it? We can kind of go back to all of this information, and then we've able to have it together. So it's just, that's a lot of stuff we just do internally, but it's stuff we can share with you, and we will, so you can kind of see where we came up with all those numbers. Checks and balances.
Any questions you guys have for us? Anything we didn't cover?
Well, the only thing I had a question on is from a time frame standpoint. One of my major goals is, I know that the turf is not included in the project, so that's going to have to be an LFI that we do. When should we expect to have the funding secured in order to move forward with turf instead of a natural grass field?
We'll need that decision once we get together as a facilities group for the football stadium, get through all the programming, exactly everything that you need. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Most football stadiums have, we'll go through and we'll verify everything, put that together, and then we'll start developing cost estimates based off of each one of those.
And then once we get the cost estimate, then we can start the funding initiatives, whether it's through the booster club or the athletic department, whatever it may be, however we decide to attack that, to raise the funds for that.
Yeah.
We should start that process until we know what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So we know what we're looking to raise.
And that's not very far away. So we should be able to get to that pretty quick. And what we'll do is we'll do natural turf and field turf if that's what you want to show. Is you're going to want a cost difference between the two so that people understand the cost between the two of them. But
And we're talking like maintenance, like we can look at maintenance schedules based on what cost savings would be from maintenance schedules, seeding and all that, and watering and all that.
Yep.
Your cost difference of owning turf versus owning.
Yeah. because you're getting 10 to maybe 12 years out of turf. And then you're gonna have another 300,000.
Which is where, that's when you go to your stadium naming rights and your stadium sponsorships and stuff like that, setting your years on how long they get that for, to where in 10 years you can come back and re-up all the way to place. And I know that putting turf in at the beginning, as opposed to retroing turf into a stadium that has been grass, it's cheaper to put it in up front as opposed to come back and tearing everything out. And putting it in.
Absolutely.
So that's my goal is to put turf in from the get-go. I just need to know when, as a district, maybe that's our decision, when do I need to have the money secured?
Well, and that may be something that we can discuss, like if your funding's falling short and the documents have been bid and you don't have that money for the alternate, that's a conversation we have with the construction manager and we say, hey, how long can we have to make this decision? Like,
Right.
can you give us, a couple more months or,
Right.
and many times they can get their contractors, like if for some reason you don't have the funds when they're going out to bid, maybe we say, hey, you need to make sure that your guys are gonna hold this cost for 120 days.
Right.
Hold it even longer because we think we're gonna get there, we're so close.
Right.
Or we just ask the CMR, how long can they hold that cost
Right.
of the alternate that we got? And then they'll have to tell us, like, how long do you have before, we need to know which one is it gonna be?
Right.
Which one are we installing?
So I am looking at the schedule, the proposed schedule. It sounds like we're gonna have the football stadium docs by April of 2021, ready to bid.
Yes.
So we would have between now and April of next year to secure the funds, or say, can we have until August?
Right.
Right.
To secure the fund, I'm asking for that. So we've essentially got 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, and really the field turf would want to be that decision more than likely.
I think that's the only thing that wasn't included, I mean, scoreboards included, press box, I mean, everything's funded. The only thing that this money can't be used for is field turf. So if we wanted, that's gonna have to be an LFI through stadium sponsorships, naming rights. We kind of discussed that a little
But
bit.
you also gotta make sure that you can't sell it, you can't charge naming rights for a certain percentage of
Correct, yeah.
the debt by law. So you might not even be able to get enough to cover the cost, because it's not gonna, for this building, it was only 5%, so I'm just using that as a basis, and the project's
Right.
3.5 million, you're,
But the
Sorry,
scoreboard,
what was that? You can't.
because it's debt, it's tax-related debt, you can't sell naming rights, there's a certain, it's, present market value. You can't sell it for only, it's usually about 5%
The total value.
of the total value.
but that doesn't, we're not hamstrung when it comes to advertising sponsorships in the facility. And
Right,
if
it's
the
just naming, that's
scoreboard-
naming rights,
Right.
is
and
what
that's-
I'm talking about.
Yeah, the numbers that I was
But
looking at as far as what it would cost to, what we were kind of given at the very beginning, rough estimate, it would be about $300,000 to do turf at the beginning, above and beyond what natural grass would be. But if you were to retro turf, you're talking 750, 800,000. So we would have to come up with that 300 mark. That's kind of a ballpark figure. And doing that through stadium, not naming rights, but advertising sponsorships.
Yeah,
on the scoreboard.
right.
The scoreboard is already paid for as a part of the project. We got all the advertising space around there that we can
Right.
sell the advertising space, and
You can still do naming rights,
you
you
can still do
just,
naming rights. It's
to
just not-
cover it, you're not gonna
Right.
be able to do it, whatever
Is
you
it
want.
5% total, or is it 5% per naming? So
It's 5% of the present market value of your project,
total?
total.
You know, stadium.
You can't do 5% for the stadium, 5% for the field, 5% for the track. No.
What about
Now,
the fundraising?
Now, there are well, yeah, that's the other thing, the fundraising, community fundraising
Yes.
Are
initiatives.
there someone that's on that?
You know, what's that?
No,
That's the company I worked for prior to coming here is that's what their business model was. I worked for Side Effects, and they helped structure funding for stadium renovations, scoreboards, all that kind of stuff. So I have a little bit of background in that and how to structure those things. My biggest thing was time frame.
Right.
How much time do I have to come up with $300K so that we can put turf in, as opposed to 3 years from now when the community says, why in the heck didn't we get field turf? It's like, well, now we got to come up with twice that amount.
Yeah.
in order to put
I would
it
put,
in?
I would set your goal for April.
Okay.
And see where, we'll just have to see
Yeah.
where you're at that point.
Okay.
There's a little difference between natural turf and field turf with under drains and all of that, but
Right.
nothing to the,
Yeah.
nothing that would hurt the schedule or anything like that.
Justin, I've almost got this initial baseline POR done. So I'll communicate with Laura and have that done, and she can communicate directly with you.
Okay.
And we keep that point of contact correct.
Yeah.
And then we'll set up a meeting. It's not gonna take very long. If we can squeeze it in next week, I don't know if it's a good time. There may be some
works for you guys.
I don't know about, for staff. It'll take it could take 2 hours, maybe 3 hours to go through that with the group. So, normally we would do that during the day, because everybody's gonna be here.
This would be with the facilities or?
This would be not facilities, not core, but more specific to the administration. Yeah, so.
Curriculum, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. And then once we're completed with that, then that would go us to the next step to, getting facility and community members,
Gotcha.
more staff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So we'll communicate. If we have to do it in the evening, then we can do it in the evening, but a lot of times once your staff
If it's
is.
full personnel, I think we can make it work for today.
Okay, so I'll let Laura communicate with you and we'll get it set up.
Is that the one you're speaking of where you wanted, the principal, the special education director?
Yeah,
all those-
yeah. Yeah, and that will establish the baseline. And then we'll start getting a bigger group in.
And as we move forward, I'm gonna try to let you know, like, hey, maybe next month, we're gonna want, to have a meeting to discuss the building system. Can we get something on the calendar? And we're trying to try and give you some time to get your people together, to get that on the calendar. So try not to make anything, hey, we gotta have a meeting tomorrow. That we won't be doing that. So give you some notice so everybody can be out at the meetings that they want to be at. Good? Any other questions?
I have another question about the stadium. So you talked about the, having artificial turf. Has anybody ever gone from artificial turf back to grass? What's the,
I haven't dealt with the district that's done it, but I know that there's been some colleges that have done it. And that's only because depending on what studies you look at, some feel turf's more injury prone, injuries, field turf there's the whole comment about it being disinfected and all that stuff. So some colleges have changed back and not high schools.
so you don't know the cost associated with it or the difficulties? I just wondered.
As far as like the difficulties in
Well, he was saying there's a bigger cost if you go from grass to turf rather than putting turf down initially. So is the opposite true as well?
Yeah, there would be some costs because you'd be ripping up.
Yeah.
Like Brian was saying, there's a different under drainage
Under-drainage.
system and a buildup of the layers underneath. So yeah, you rip all that artificial out and kind of start back where you were. So there would be additional costs.
Grade, new drainage,
Yeah.
sprinkler.
I just wondered, if the economy is out, if you're required to get new turf every so many years, what happens if there's comes a time when the school can't afford?
But you're saying you're going to have natural turf, but if it comes a time where you can afford the field turf, say 7-8 years from now.
No, I'm saying if we put turf in.
If they didn't,
Yeah,
couldn't you replace
we
it?
put turf in.
10 to 12 years from now, it's time to replace the turf, but we can't.
You would use some of your, you would budget, you would put some of your PI money in a sub account and
Yeah,
put it as a budget
Well,
reserve.
it all comes back to your stadium advertisement, stuff like that, and how you structure the contracts with the folks that are advertising the stadium. And you do, through your scoreboard stuff, you do a 3-year, they pay $10,000 over the course of 3 years. Or if you're going to do stadium naming rights, 5% of $3.5 million is $175,000. you get $175,000 for your stadium naming rights for 10 years. They give you $17,500 a year for over the course of 10 years. At the end of that 10 years, you get another $175,000. And that goes to the replacement cost of the turf. And then
Right,
you're
like
updating
earmark
your
it.
advertisements, and
Mhm.
it's always funded
You
through
also want
LFI.
to factor in your replacement of your track.
Yeah.
With that FR
Yeah.
left, you have about 120,000.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that, and I know that Brian's a great planner for all that, but, you know, we've been in a situation where we're laying teachers off.
Right.
So, you know, you're gonna have some time. I was just curious what the cost was.
And that's the recommendation I always heard when we went through these exercises and you're doing we've had some districts that were debating between artificial and natural, and you do the total cost of ownership, and what you're doing is the money you would have put into the fertilizer and the mowing and the maintenance of the natural, in theory, you're setting that aside each year, and that builds up for that linear replacement. So that's always the justification for the cost, as well as the money you're saving in the maintenance. If you set that aside, you'll pay for the replacement.
Those two.
So since we're talking stadium stuff, I thought about this tonight, so I figured I would say it now so I don't forget. But I know one of the thoughts we had was, as we move forward with a new stadium, is that we were gonna possibly just keep this one for, junior high activities and overflow events. That there still needs stuff done to that to keep it up, right? There's a lot of electrical issues, lighting, that it's gonna take some care and feeding to get us to where that needs to be right now in that aspect. So we can't lose sight of that. We don't need the light shutting off on us in the fourth quarter of the rival. We were losing and then won, but
Anyone from Norfolk is listening?
You might be able to potentially get some advertising out there as well.
yeah.
I don't envision for a junior high football game, you're going to be outside of bleachers. So just something to take into consideration.
And do they play at night normally, junior high?
Volleyball.
Yeah, so the lights may not be a
Be an
big
issue.
issue.
Not in the early season. Toward the end, you kind of turn it on sometimes. The last couple of games, usually we get to a point where it's dark at 7:30. I have the lights on right now, and it's not even 8 o'clock. So,
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there as a reminder,
Yeah.
like, hey, we can't lose sight of the fact that there are some issues and that we need to put some time into that to keep it worthy of use.
I think that could be something that you also talk to, our youth programs that are going to start using the field. We're going to open it up to, obviously the Lee Stringers already use it, and BASA, if they want to start, if we want to start to incorporate it as not just a middle school. The only thing that's going to be played on from a school standpoint is middle school football, but we're going to open it up to the community. How do those folks start to incorporate into it becomes a community facility as opposed to just the local? I mean, we obviously still own it, but what kind
Yeah,
of financial
how can we?
contributions do they give to maintain the facilities and stuff like that as well?
Well, hopefully, it was informative.
Yeah, very good.
First meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
And I think as we go forward, right, I would like to, ask that you still help give us guidance as well, right? Like, we need these people here. These are the people that work the best for this. I mean, Justin may already know all that, but if you ask me, I'll be like, I don't know. So, but all those things kind of help us so that we can also articulate amongst ourselves, like, hey, there's no need for this group of people to come here to do this. This is specifically in-school teachers. Hey, this is an important meeting. Make sure the board, the 2 members assigned to that are there so they can help scope that, in that aspect. So,
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because there are going to be a lot of meetings where the board just doesn't need to necessarily be at. And we don't want to offend anyone on the board by having this meeting without you. You're eventually going to hear about it at the board meeting. But there's all these different meetings that go on that, you all just can't be at. It's too many things going on. So I'm glad that you're.
yeah, and just be effective use of what they're bringing to the table, right? Our force multipliers to what we're trying to complete. in
Well,
that
that's a
aspect.
great example of what Jacob talked about, getting some insight from Garmin Miller. The next big step that they're gonna, I think, in my opinion, be able to help you folks with the selection you're seeing on. Because they're gonna have experience working with all those firms, they're gonna tell you what they're good at and maybe where some areas of opportunity that they're not so high at. So I think that's just my take.
Mhm.
I think you want to involve them in that process and kind of, they probably work with every firm that's gonna go at.
Mhm.
They're gonna be able to give you some good insight on it.
Excellent.
Did we have any community comments or questions?
I didn't have any, I didn't see any.
Do you have like a snapshot of the design meetings and what's a Gantt chart form, but kind of like, okay, this is a list, this is what we need to check off, this is what we need to do. Is that something that snapshot form can be?
Don't necessarily, but it's not to say that we can't put something together.
Well, I can assure you that as much of a big dog Brian is when it comes to athletics, Laura swings a big club usually in her office, so if things aren't getting done, they get done. I just got out of traction last week. No, I'm joking. She's a good project manager, that's for sure, so.
We're looking forward to this partnership, and we're all really excited of what we're going to be able to create fully as a team, not only the ones that are here present, but our staff and the teachers' input and all those specialists that know exactly what we need to highly educate our kids. So we're super excited as
I
well.
would say thank you for battling the OFCC on our behalf. That was nice to hear, because we, Jacob said, we kind of have to agree to go forward, but yet we all have the feeling that it's not quite where it should be.
Yeah, and I really suspect that, I think Valerie, I think she knows that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that's interesting about OSCC is that there's certain things that are grounded in law, and you can't change that. Right. You can change it, but it doesn't, I can't change it. Valerie can't change it. It ends up being constituents can then change it. And then there's policy, which sometimes policy gets in place long enough, it does get accepted up into law. So the governing sector of law is in House Bill or Senate Bill 3318. If you ever want to look it up. Think about that thing. And it covers the funded program, it covers career tech, and it covers the expedited program. And so they kept adding as different programs came on. So the trick is that if you have to challenge something, if it's grounded in law, they're not going to change. If it's grounded in policy, now we got some maneuverability to try to make it work. So that's where we have to weave.
I think the problem for us, and even in the last round, is that their formula that they have works like 95% of the time. And we're just at that 5% that we have such a unique situation that the birth rates don't work because we have right cat coming, right? And the 10-year trend doesn't work because it's only been 3 to 5 years now for us, and it was nothing really when the last time it was done. So we're just at kind of a unique, call at this time, and we just don't fit that.
Well, and to be honest with you, I have taken, on numerous occasions, I have taken and scheduled a meeting with OCC and brought folks from the district to come up and have a meeting in Columbus and sit down. And those have been pretty successful. I think sometimes when you're doing things by phone, to say no is much easier. It's like an email, no. It's different when you're face to face and having them have to.
And we're in a very different situation. I mean, we had the previous board, there were board members that tried to go to LFCC before and said, hey, we're gonna have all this growth, and back in 2014, our projections were wildly incorrect.
Yeah.
But there was nothing they could do about it.
Yeah.
The good news is, we're at 80% state match. I mean, I have to say, by waiting, by doing nothing, we benefited immensely. So it's all gonna work out, and I think the thing we all have to remember is the numbers, though they're important now, it's really not till we start the next phase. Is it, I mean, that's where I kind of got to when we did all the preliminary information. These numbers may not be perfect, but where it really matters is when they match us in 7 to 10 years.
In marking, right, those spaces that are funded match now, but will be once they do the projections again. And I think those are some key components.
You know, really, the point is to make sure that we can maximize your credit. Because when you take the amount of money you spend on that K-5 and how much that exceeds what your local share is going to be at 20%, that delta is money that's coming back in cash, check. So that's important, and we know that up front, and if we just stay on track with that, then we keep that number. Unfortunately, the inflationary factor doesn't catch up to it, but, you know, we kind of know what's out there in the future.
That's our down payment on the next building.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna need one by then.
So the only good news that come out of anything out of the state would be to, you know, have some influx of additional cash into their budget for OCC to catch up.
So
and
is
get
there
back
any
on track.
chance that by the time we get design phase done, that we'll still be on last year's construction costs, or no?
Well, that's the magic question. I mean, I don't know what the inflationary factor is going to be in, but, you know,
I'm assuming last year's costs are gonna be less than next year's.
yeah. You know, we talked about like possible material shortages and, you know, trying to get that in, and, you know, prices keep going up. But then when we go to the grocery store, you know, you can't find what you want. You know, it takes 2 weeks, and all of a sudden it's there.
Yeah.
Every
Prices up.
hurricane makes me cringe just that little bit.
They never did exactly. So, you know, building and construction costs. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an ever. Don't worry, we'll send more over on it.
I can't do anything about the fact that plywood tripled in cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I went to Lowe's and talked about it. It's a lot. It's like, holy cow, this used to be like 50 cents. Jeez. All right. Anything else from us with regards to you in the meeting? Any other questions from the board? Facilities committee? Members that are here? Mr. Gilbert?
Nope, I'm good.
Thank you, sir. All right. I guess at this point would be a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Thank you, Vida.
I'll
Do we?
second. Julie.
Thank you, Julie, for the second. Any discussion? Brennan, could you call the roll?
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Ms. Reese,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yeah.
Mr. King.
Yes.
7:54.
Thank you for doing this, Julie. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
That's what you. Thank you.
The only thing